Okay, we're live. Welcome to the second online direct democracy party, Chinwag. Tonight we've got Chris and Francois in the house, ready to answer some questions and discuss the week in politics. How are we, everyone?
Very good, thank you very much. Good to see you.
G'day, John. Good to be here. Hey, Francois.
How are you, Chris? Very good to see you.
Excellent.
Very good. Now, been a pretty active week in the mainstream media in regards to political entitlements again. Today, John Howard got brought up that as an ex-Prime Minister, he's spent 1.3 million, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years. Francois, how many years was?
I think it's over the last 3 years. But
Yep.
as you say, they're probably trying to, scapegoat someone. Scapegoat,
Yep.
They're really fetching for it, the media. Some entitlements might be all right to me, but the amount of money that I wonder, I would like to know if when they start fetching a little bit, how much altogether per year is the cost of entitlements for all of them altogether. That would be one interesting number, because I'm talking about the past ones and the current ones, and see how much, because as soon as you are, you have the prime minister with all the former prime ministers that are getting a certain amount of money for their entitlements, and then you have all the current ones and all the old politicians that have left. So you take Brown and Bishop or the other ones, and I think that number would be quite interesting. Let's see if it's, that would be. I would be very interested in knowing that one. I don't know if we can find that on the Poly web, but it would be a really good one to check. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree. As you were saying that, I thought, yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever seen that figure of how much not just current politicians' entitlements are costing us, but also the ex-politicians' entitlements are costing us as well. I suppose it's all becoming very overwhelming in relation to how much these politicians, past and present, are actually costing us. And every day we see figures from all of these guys and girls. You're looking at upwards from $500,000 per person. And a lot of the time that isn't even including their wage. So, I think they, just due to the very nature of what they've got to do, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but and you can sort of look at a couple of them and go, oh, yeah, I kind of understand why they spent that, but you multiply that over hundreds of politicians, and it starts to really, really add up. Just look at your own budget. If I've got a budget and I'm buying a coffee every day, then it starts to impact on my budget. One coffee is fine. You start buying a coffee every day, it starts to impact on your budget. But then out of that same purse, with the equivalent to the politicians, out of that same purse, if you're paying for all your mates' coffees as well, it's going to send you broke real quick. So what's happening at the moment is phenomenal.
One of the things that I've noticed looking through the numbers, and one of the anomalies, is office fit outs, and the amount of money that's spent on new fixtures, new equipment every single year as part of a politician's budget. Now, I'm pretty sure most electronic equipment doesn't need to be changed annually. You can make your office fit outs and that last more than 12 months, and it doesn't need to be refreshed and painted every time it gets a little bit stale. And that is the coffee, isn't it? That keeps adding up. Every year that money's being spent over and over again, and there's not really that much justification for it.
Yeah, I struggle to understand a lot of that stuff. You look at how much it costs to build a house, and it's often the equivalent. Their refurbishments annually are often the same amount that it costs to build a house. A modest house, not a massive one. Depends on who you are, though. So yeah, it's phenomenal, and realistically, as public servants, like they do with the police, you know, they know any police officer that's on duty, they need to know where that police officer is every second of every day, and I think that, and you know, what they're spending as well, obviously. I think that politicians are the same. We should have all of their diaries should be open while we're paying them. We should know exactly where they are, exactly who they're talking to, because we're their bosses.
Well, I think that's one of the things the online direct democracy party is pretty passionate about, is having that open book standard, you know, setting a standard that says, look, we don't need to operate in the dark. We can operate with a public open book that says, you know, we need this much to do this job. You could almost have the members and the people get involved in the spending process rather than removing them entirely. And the thing is the detachment between, like you said, a modest house, the cost of that compared to what the politicians are spending on office fit outs, it's very comparable. And realistically, that probably shouldn't be a comparison we can make. Like, how can it possibly cost that much money each year to justify their office? That's, you know, how much time do they actually spend there as well, which is another consideration.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. A lot of these politicians will spend either most of their time in Canberra, or you know, the other half of their time they should be out in their electorates talking to the people who just simply don't have a chance to come and see them. Whether it's because of poor public transport, whether it's because everybody's working, you know, all those sorts of things. They should be out beating the streets.
Yeah, and be good to see a little bit of common sense. I don't think anybody in Australia is seeing any common sense in what kind of behavior behavior of spending on the public purse, thinking, well, that's what I need to blow to do my job properly, which is we're not completely satisfied with all what they do, it seems to be. So yeah, just their behavior, and the acceptance of it that has been going on for probably years. But now with the tools like the ones and transparency, we need more transparency. I think Polyweb is trying to do that, and I hope we'll get the support of the Australian public, because when they see it, it feels a little bit like you feel that they have their hands in your pockets, and yeah, you can't. And
the problem is, I feel that like you say, it's hard to sort of keep a track of it, and at the moment, especially, we've got so many rorts sort of coming up, and so many questionable activities, which, you know, you could quite easily put in the basket of corruption. How are we supposed to keep on top of all this sort of stuff? You know, when the politicians are so corrupt, you can't keep up with it. It's very easy to feel quite disempowered and disenchanted, and we need to pull that up. And obviously, everybody's interested in that, but nobody really knows how to. And when you look at it, the most effective way to do that is get everybody educated, get everybody informed, and then take action the best way that they know how. And at this point in time, as we're between elections, there's really not that much we can do except, you know, lobby the existing members and let them know that we're simply not very happy. But we've tried that for years now, and all they do is they placate us by saying, yes, we'll do this, yes, we'll do that. And then all of a sudden they do whatever they like, and you're sort of left thinking, promises, all they come up with is excuses. They don't come up with solutions. They don't fulfill their promises, and ultimately what they do is they just lie. And you know, it's no good. They can't keep going like that. It's an example of the failure of democracy, and what they're doing is just perpetuating that failure.
Well, the topic of politicians stretching the truth probably leads well into the next topic that we're going to cover this evening, and that would be, we're discussing, I guess, fake news to some extent, but used as a political instrument. And we've had this week the tragedy in Melbourne in regards to the runaway car and the driver that has taken out a number of pedestrians. And then we've seen what was a very fast reaction from the One Nation Party to state that it was definitely a terrorist act and that it's taken place in Melbourne. Now, what do you guys think? You know, has prior to the consensus being known publicly and more, you know, a widely accepted had happened according to the police and those on the scene, rather than spilling what potentially is ultimately a fake story to better and to push another agenda? I mean, like, what's your thoughts?
Well,
yeah, I agree. I saw the footage of when Pauline was advised by her advisor that of what had happened. Now, obviously, I'm not sure what that information was that he passed on to her. They probably saw it as an amazing opportunity because all the media were right there. Most of those media probably weren't even aware of what was happening. So it was a very good opportunity for them to exposure. Now, there's a couple of considerations here that I would see. One is that as a public official, your duty is not to incite fear where fear is not necessary. And I think this one is probably, although I haven't heard what the outcome of that is, I don't believe that it was the action of someone who is I'm led to believe it's not somebody who is actually and believes in the Islamic religion. They were just a nutbag who needed a cause or an excuse, and simply yelling out Allah Akbar before you run somebody over doesn't make you a religious person in the slightest. It makes you a nutbag. So, look, I think that we've got police for a reason. Those police is the job of those police is to determine all of the facts before they come to a conclusion. And I think it would be smart, wise of the politicians to actually allow the people whose job that is to sort through the facts and come up with a conclusion, to actually, you know, let them do their job before they spread any fear, which is the last thing we need, because fear leads to disempowerment, disempowerment leads to anger, and anger leads to violence, and that's not where we want to go. We're trying to move away from that. So yeah, although, you know, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is a police officer the other day, and they said to me, well, it was terror, but it wasn't a religious-based terrorist attack. So yes, it was terror, in fact, in the way that it was terrifying, and the people who were there were probably terrified. However, these days, I think the word terrorism has been redefined somewhat in this era, and we need to be very careful about the effect of that word, not just the pure definition of it.
Terror is idealized by a cause, I think. So the word terror there is, I don't think it should be used, as you say, you call it a nutbag. I think that's more appropriate, because terror has been more adapted to a cause over the, you know, probably since the 60s. And you should keep it that way. That's what terrorists are. That's what terrorists is. Well, I want to add up to what you were saying, Chris, is that not only she should check the facts before she speaks on, you know, to the public media, but also Channel 7 has been published. They didn't check, they just were ready for the story. So yeah, the media is working exactly to provoke and create that, how do you call it, you know, anger between the people, and that's what they are fueling it. It's their, it's a little bit like the TV shows. How do you call it? Sorry about that.
It's their agenda. It's serving their agenda. So what they do is they've got a storyline, they've got a narrative, they've got an agenda, and anything that pops up, they'll use that to serve their agenda. They'll twist it and bend it. They'll use images from their stock images. They'll use language that has triggers because people at the moment are conditioned to trigger on fear. And they will pour that stuff out, and regardless of whether it's true or not, or whether they have to apologise or not afterwards, once it's done, and the effect has been felt, and that just ripples out throughout the country, and it's disgusting, it's irresponsible, and it really needs to stop.
That's it. They've poisoned the ears. They've done it, and they do it on a regular basis. How are you, Robin?
Oh, good, thanks.
Welcome on board. Good to see
I had
you.
a bit of trouble getting on.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a new computer for Christmas.
So we're live, Robin. We're currently talking to the nation. So welcome aboard. I hope you can catch up.
Okay.
We were talking as the terror as a tool for marketing, and whether the example of Hansen, Pauline Hanson's rant on about the nutbag that started driving over people in Melbourne and killed 5 people, and how it's being used by the media to market, the sentiment of fear and give more support to, more policing probably, and more terror, and all this stuff. So that's what we were just now.
Yes, yeah, that's very scary. Yeah, I had a post on Facebook with some of my family and friends.
Which part of it do you think is scary, Robin? Which bit's the bit that you think is scary? Do you think it's the act, the response, where we're going from here, or what particular part?
Well, every time something like this happens, and Pauline Hanson and others like her jump on the bandwagon, more and more people seem to be following her and buying into all that fear and hatred and all that.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, yes, you like us. You fear that the message is actually the carrier of hatred.
Yeah.
I can't help but look at this a little bit differently, I suppose, to a lot of people, probably because of my history. But I look at the things that happen, and I look at the fear that's caused because of the reaction to what's happened. And then I sit back and I look and I take that into perspective as, how many people are killed by terrorists, true terrorists, as opposed to killed by nutbags who just try and align themselves with a particular type of religion just before they start killing people. And look, I think that Australia is turning to Pauline Hanson, or Australians are turning to Pauline Hanson, because they don't feel that the existing government is doing anything to actually stand up for them, to protect them, to help them, to make them feel safe. And they feel that in the absence of the voice of reason, the voice of condemnation will do. And I get that. I don't hold that against anybody who supports Pauline at all. I think that the current establishment is doing an absolutely appalling job of making people feel safe. They're doing exactly the opposite. I haven't seen anybody hold a press conference from the Liberal Party yet, and that may be my problem. I haven't seen anything pop up. It may have happened, but I haven't seen it. Where they stand up and say, "Okay, look, these are the facts. This is the outcome, and this is, you should feel scared of this. You should not feel scared of this, and this is why." Just talking to the Australian population like they're adults, and you respect their intelligence, and you respect that they may feel scared because something's happened and insults them in the media. Now, it's the job of the politicians to actually stand up in front of the people and say, okay, this stuff here that you've been fed, yeah, that's all bullshit. These are the facts. This is some perspective. It's under control. And any questions, we'll deal with those and answer them, and we'll move on.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I think we've covered that as best as we can in our capacity here this evening. But talking about individual perceptions and the way things are seen and perceived, and certain events and culture and all the rest of it, we have an issue in Australia at the moment. I'm not sure whether everyone has heard, but Fremantle City has decided to move Australia Day till the 28th of January rather than celebrating on the 26th as a sign of respect to the First Nations people. And it's caused a divided debate, of course, as it does, because we have a number of issues involved with such a complex thing. Like, many Australians just see it as a celebration of a day that celebrates us all being Australian and don't really connect it to a historical point. But then, of course, you must acknowledge that the First Nations definitely have an argument to play in regards to that being a celebration of the takeover of this country, if you will, from them by the European settlers that came here on the Endeavour with, Captain, who was it? James Phillip. Look, I don't even know my Australian history. Can't remember. But anyway, what does everyone think of that? Should we move it, or should it stay there, or is there a happy medium in the middle somewhere that we can meet?
I think that is one serious hot potato. Not being an original Australian, I will watch what I say, but personally, I would be happy to change the day. I have absolutely no problem with change the day, because I understand that the feeling of those of the Aboriginal people is spat on or deeply, because for them it's more of a souvenir of more like a funeral than a party day. So I would see absolutely no problem. That's only me. But as I say, I'm not of an Australian background originally, so I should be careful with my approach, because I do not have all the information and growing up. So I say, good luck to Chris and Robin.
You go, Robin.
Yeah, I would. If you asked me that about 20 years ago, I would have not understood what all the fuss was about. But I've got more and more knowledge about how the First Nations people feel, and started to understand the history and everything. And yeah, I really understand how this is a bad day for them, and that should be acknowledged. And I've got no problems with changing the dates, and that we should probably have some sort of something for them to acknowledge what happened. And, yeah.
I think it's a good poll to put on the Polyweb. You probably have put it already, John, but
yeah, the Polyweb's currently running a poll, and it's at 98% support for moving the day out of respect. Now, that's still low numbers, though, that have actually voted, so we haven't elevated it to an official position or anything as such. But yeah, the poll is running and it's out there, and if you're on Polyweb, get on there and share it.
I think I probably come from a different position on this one as well, because that's how I roll. I think that that's a wasted opportunity. Look, I think as a non-Indigenous Australian, I'm a member of of a group of people who have been on this a part of this country for just over 200 years. And realistically, I feel that the Australian culture is brand spanking new. We've got a massive opportunity here to shape the Australian culture into whatever we want it to be. And I look at places like New Zealand, where the Maori culture is a massive part of their culture, and they embrace it and they love it. They teach it at school, they teach dancing at schools, they teach all that sort of stuff. Now, I don't know how sort of deep that goes over there, but I am extremely jealous of that. And I think that there was an opportunity there where those two dates married up for us to go, you know what, Australia Day is an opportunity for us to really emphasise how important the Indigenous culture of Australia is to us, and we should be carrying the Indigenous culture on our shoulders, because they've been here for a hell of a lot longer than we have. They looked after this country of ours for a hell of a lot longer than we've been here for, and we should be giving them the respect that they deserve. And we should be doing everything that we can, instead of running away from this and moving Australia Day to a different day. We should embrace this as an opportunity to go, okay, let's start teaching people about the Aboriginal culture, because it is important to us and it is disappearing at a scary, scary rate. And we need to get back into that, and we need to teach that, and we need to embrace it, and we need to take it on as a part of our Australian culture. I absolutely want to see more of that everywhere around us. I want to see us just like New Zealand. I want us to. I saw the other day, just before a football game, the Australian. It was an Australian Aboriginal dance of some sort before a footy game, just like the Maoris did. And I thought, brilliant, more of it, bring it on, because we need some depth to the Australian culture that goes further past 200 years.
Yeah, I'm all for the unification of the cultures. Like, as far as I can see, most of Australia's white history, as far as European settlement goes, is just a replication of the England we left. And for a long time in Australia, that was all we did, was replicate what we left it in the mother country. Now, we've since formed a cultural identity of Australia, but at some point, like you said, Chris, the history outweighs the 200 years that we've occupied these lands. 40,000 to 90,000 years of history predates us by a long shot, and to just ignore that as part of our own ignorance would be a pretty big waste. Like, the number of people that line up every year to look at the pyramids don't really realise that the rock art over in the Burrup Peninsula on Western Australia's on the west coast, that's 3 times older. And it's some of the it's the oldest rock art on the face of the planet, and yet there's been football field size areas of it removed completely. Just bulldozers come in and push it away. Now, if someone turned up to the pyramids with a bulldozer and decided to push that out of the way, I think someone would get upset. So somewhere along the line, we've devalued, not we personally, but the culture that the Australian people have created has devalued what 40,000 or 50,000 years of history looks like. And if it means moving the day, don't worry me one little bit. I don't celebrate Australia Day because English settlers landed on a beach and took over a country. I celebrated it as a sign of cultural unification, but I'm quite open to moving the day. It's only a day. It's a calendar. I'm pretty sure it actually wasn't on the 26th of January originally. It might have been somewhere around the 28th of May, but since we formalised it in 1901, I think, with Federation, it's been the 26th of January ever since, because that matches up with the day that we landed here, of course.
Yeah.
That's me.
I see what I do understand, and I certainly understand why it would be considered, but I think that it doesn't. If we can't get 2 parties in a room to go, okay, look, this is what's happening. This is the situation. There could be some hostility here. Let's just avoid the hostility and avoid those difficult conversations altogether and move it, as opposed to, look, here's the situation. How do we make the best out of this situation and really help Australians work through the negative feelings that may come up here? Because what we don't, why do we continue to say it's okay to have these negative feelings and run away from them? We really need to get everybody in the room and say, okay, well, what's making you upset about this day, and how can we actually use this situation to assist everybody get through this feeling of adversity. And that's what's going to bring us together. Avoiding the conversation altogether and moving the days just makes it look like the native people of Australia versus the white people of Australia. And there is no way to make those two things exist on the same day. We'll separate them. I'm sorry, but that sounds, separating those two things because it's uncomfortable, seems a lot like some past history of Australia and past history of America. And I personally am not for separating things because it's a little bit difficult. Let's work ourselves through that pain. Let's try and help everybody get through this and come out the other side together as opposed to separated.
I'm not sure if I may say that not both sides have pain. They are Chris. So because the white do not suffer, do not feel the same way because they can't have the same feeling because their ancestors have been wiped out by the others. So it's completely it's not. It's not balanced. If you sit both of them at the table, already you have 3% of the population that is the Aboriginal in this case. The balance is not right. So I don't think that you can sit at the table. And I believe also that it has been trial to sit at the table and try to overcome. And there was Kevin Rudd who did the sorry to the Aboriginal people, but I think that was also just a little flag of excuse with very little meaning. So yes, I'm just pointing out that the level of pain is very different. So sitting at the table and trying to solve it is a complicated one, I find, but I'm open to, it's not a decision that we are doing anyway, but we're discussing it, so it's good to put all the points on the table.
Yeah, the biggest thing I find with it is that no matter how empathetic or sympathetic I am to the plight of the First Nations people, I'm not a First Nations people, and I can't connect with that, how bad, how much that memory, that history, essentially, if you just put it in plain terms, a bunch of white people turned up one day, took their country and killed as many of them as we possibly could. We didn't have that problem. We turned up as either convicts, which means we're already criminals, or we turned up as settlers, or we've turned up as migrants since. So essentially, we don't have that history to say it's not our call. My position is that if they asked that it be changed out of respect for them, then I would be obliged to say that is 100% acceptable, because we can continue to celebrate our Australia Day as far as we want with, Arthur Phillips landing on the Botany Bay. But in regards to them, that's not something they're ever going to want to celebrate. Realistically, we removed their culture, their history, their entire peoples. We wiped them out, and we've, 330,000 people died over the course of the first 20 odd years that we were here. Now, we don't sort of compare those numbers. Everyone knows about World War II and how many Jewish people were killed during that conflict, but we forget that on our own shores that us and our ancestors did the same thing. so many times worse. We're sort of my position is that we don't have a perspective. Like, we do not. We're a privileged bunch who've sort of, we got the country. We've been here since it was all settled. We don't have that history to worry about. No, and that's not our drama. So it's easy for us to sort of dismiss it and make it not relevant. Whereas I think if we woke up and we were part of that First Nation, those First Nation people, our perspective would be so much different than it is sitting here discussing it right now, personally.
Yeah, fair enough. That makes sense.
I think, Chris, you might be right. I think that the Aboriginal people would like to be heard, and it would be a good thing to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be a good thing to include them in the day and their culture, and them maybe telling us how they feel, and talking about what really happened on that day, instead of it being like a celebration of, hey, we took over your country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my point of view too. I suppose at the moment I see Australia Day as an excuse to sit around, drink beer, and have a barbecue, and celebrate thongs. I'd like Australia Day to mean a little bit more than that, and celebrating everything that is white Australia is a very, very short celebration. And I think that if we could actually bring in, acknowledging obviously the pain and the suffering that has occurred in this very short period of time since we've been here, how to, I suppose, move Australia back in the right direction and start to embrace the Indigenous culture. Sure, we're not going to be able to fix it. So much damage has already been done, and the road to repair is I can only imagine how long it's going to take. But
just being heard is healing for them. It would be healing for them to feel like we're listening, and
yeah, and we care, and we embrace them as brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
It's got to help, surely, to let them know that we do care, and we are interested, and we do feel that their culture is a part of ours.
I think our culture would be so much the better for it, because it's not for us, not us personally dismissing it, but it'd be like just turning your back on the same kind of heritage that the Egyptians have with the pyramids, and the connections that the English have with Stonehenge. Like, we don't have those connections, and to share it as a unified culture, I think that's the future of Australia right there. Like, it'd be great. Well, we've pretty much run out of time this evening, people. We've done pretty good. We didn't get too carried away with any of the subjects. I'm cutting off we were going to discuss the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but I don't really have all the info on it that would make it as interesting as it could be.
It will. Maybe
as you guys have read up on it today.
Thank you very much. Well, let's talk about the TPP next week. Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Good to see you guys.
Too easy. Well, this will end the broadcast. If we want to hang around, we can chat after the show.
Beautiful. Good to see you. Bye.